The issue often comes up with the time and attention that a child who's just come into the home through adoption or foster care gets relative to kids who are already in the home, whether they're biological kids or they're previously adopted kids. And I think it's really important for parents to be able to sit down and just communicate about that and to really explain the reasons for the inequity, right? For the lack of sameness, for the fact that the hours devoted here to this new child just coming into our home with more pronounced needs and therefore demanding more attention, more resources, are going to be different, and why they're going to be different. And at the same time, allow our kids to voice their own frustration, to voice their own concerns or even dislike and disapproval of that reality. I think too, though, when kids, if there's a communication channel that's been opened up and there's a dialogue going back and forth, I think that as our kids who are already in our home can take a step back, they'll begin to realize, well, you know what? It may not be sameness, but it can be fair, and that is, I may not get the same time or the same attention or the same things, but I am being treated fairly because my needs are being met. And although I may not get as much time because my needs are not as pronounced, I may be getting more responsibility, more privileges, because my needs are not as pronounced, and therefore I'm more independent, I'm able to do things on my own, and I can be trusted, where that may not exist here. And I think that we have to have a more fair definition of fairness. And fairness is not sameness. Fairness is a justice, is an equity, not an equalness. And I think that a lot of times we as parents and kids as a result get confused by that. They think that fairness equals sameness or equality as opposed to an equity, where the merits have been considered, the needs have been considered, and in order to address the needs, there's going to be an unequalness, but there's still an equity because the response, the resources, the time, the attention, the affection is being directed to the needs that are the greatest at the time. And there's other things that compensate as a result. So, I think a lot of parents struggle with that. A lot of kids then use that struggle back against them. But I think we have to have, and all that gets worked out not in a lecture, not in a definition, not in a cute saying, in a connection, in a discussion, in a dialogue where a child can say, I don't think that's fair because, and explain themselves. And parent can respond, well, it may not be equal, but I think it's fair and here's why. And there's a back and there's a forth. And they don't even have to agree, but if there's that connection and there's a back and there's a forth and we can have this discussion, then I think kids are given voice, their needs are heard, their concerns are given credit, and parents are able to explain why they're doing what they're doing and why they believe that's the right thing. And there can be a connection even if we don't agree. I think oftentimes parents fall into the trap of thinking, well, connection must mean there's just perfect harmony. And that doesn't necessarily mean the case. I can tell you that we're getting to the point with our boys, our older boys, where oftentimes we're very connected even though they don't like the result of what I've decided. Or we're very connected even though we don't see eye to eye on the issue. But it's how we relate around that disagreement. It's how we relate in and through that disagreement, or in and through that frustration, or in and through that disappointment. That means we're connected. It doesn't mean that we always see eye to eye. It doesn't mean that we are always harmonious, but rather we stay like this together as opposed to allowing those disagreements to move us apart. And I think that's one where that can be equally true for fairness, and we just have to keep talking.